Hey, I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Hello, everyone. You are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton. Hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody's hanging in there. I know that the weather has been, where I am anyway, absolute shit throughout the run of the show, which we're about to do our third and closing weekend. We've dealt with really intense winds, 2 snowstorms, and rain floods. It's been, anybody who says that global warming isn't real, isn't living in Philadelphia this January. That's all I gotta say there. But yeah, it's actually ended up causing, we had to cancel last Friday's show because there was a huge snowstorm. We made it up. We're going to be doing 2 shows this Saturday because our ticket sales are doing really, really well, luckily. But yeah, I had my family in town last weekend, and that was absolutely delightful. I am so grateful for everybody who has come out to see the show. It's a really challenging role that I put a lot of my heart and soul into, blood, sweat, and tears also. And just to have so many people come out and support me and feel this overwhelming amount of love. My aunt came and visited from Michigan for the first time. And yeah, it's just been a really rewarding experience. And to have my parents here and just kind of realizing that I'm really happy where I'm at in my life. It's been really, really pleasant, I guess. The show itself isn't necessarily the most pleasant thing, the subject matter and what I have to do emotionally to get to where I need to get to. But that's why I'm an actor, right? It's acting. All right. Really briefly today, before we get to the very special 100th episode of the podcast. Wow. I'm going to talk a little bit about a subject that we discussed a little bit earlier in the fall of 2023. That's so weird to say that that's last year, but it is at this point. We're going to be talking about social media and mental health. And this came about because I was talking about Jonah Hill and how some therapy speak had been misused in a situation there. But I found an article, as usual, about social media and therapy talk. This article is from Psychology Today, and it is titled How to Counter TikTok's Mental Health Misinformation. It was actually published at the beginning of 2023, but I just came across it, and I think that it's even more of a hot topic now than it was then. So this article discusses the fact that during the pandemic, people were feeling really, really isolated, particularly teenagers who were spending vital years of development in complete isolation, not in school with their peers. And so people turned to TikTok and other social media platforms, but we're specifically talking about TikTok here, to connect and to talk about what they were experiencing. Which is great. I'm always going to be pro talking about your experiences and getting validation. But what ended up happening and what this article discusses is misinformation became rampant. So, for example, and I've heard this a lot lately too, ADHD, it is true that ADHD is frequently not diagnosed as early in young women as it is for young men. It looks completely different in young women, whereas the way it looks in young men is a little more obvious. In women, it's a little more understated. So, however, it can lead to TikTok And the way that the algorithm works is you're getting the same content. So if a video is popular, even if it's not factually accurate, if it's popular and it's similar to the things that you consume, the other videos that you consume, it's going to be on your For You page, which is problematic because it doesn't matter if the information is correct or not. If it's popular, you're going to be seeing it. And in this time of, I hesitate to say fake news. I feel like that's so passé to say at this point, but we're still living it. It's important to have the facts right. This article discusses a study which examined 500 videos on TikTok that had each gotten around 25 million views. And medical professionals, people who have gone to school for a very long time, studied these videos, often which are put together with catchy music or dances or, humor to get views because it's social media. It's about the views. These professionals found that 83.7% of these videos offered inaccurate or potentially damaging advice, or they featured a content creator who was unqualified and did not include a disclaimer. That is why I include a disclaimer at the beginning of every episode. I am not a therapist. I've been to a lot of therapy, and I'm coming from that perspective. If you're going to be putting mental health information out there, it's very important to mention a disclaimer. Or some of these videos encouraged self-diagnosis. Some of the ones that, I mentioned ADHD, bipolar disorder, depression were some of the common ones that came up. Now, what I'm going to do is in the episode notes, I'm going to include a list of TikToks that I know. I've done my research on them, and I know that they are qualified and certified to give the advice that they are giving. So I'm going to put a few of those in the episode notes for you to check out. But in addition to that, the article offers advice for content creators and for parents and for people who are working in these fields to kind of get ahead of this issue as much as possible so that we're putting accurate information out there. So yeah, social media, great, really excellent for getting the validation that you need when you're going through something, really great for fostering connection in a period of isolation. But we really, really need to watch misinformation. When I was growing up, oh God, that's me saying when I was your age, fuck. But when I was growing up, the internet was relatively new. I still remember the first thing that I ever Googled was Aaron Carter. Rest in peace. And we didn't really think about misinformation because what was out there was largely accurate. But now it's just completely different, and we need to make sure that the information that is being spread has something to stand on. So, check out the article. I'm going to put that in the episode notes. I'm going to put some TikTok creators that I love and support in the episode notes. On to our special 100th episode. Today, it's kind of different than usual. It's very different than usual. I have a conversation with Rob of Rob's 10K Friends on Instagram. Basically, what Rob does is his goal is to just meet 10,000 strangers. And we were just talking about fostering connection. He wants to create a connection with a bunch of people that he doesn't know. Rob's 10K Friends. What we did is, I messaged him to meet up, wanting to be one of his friends. And we did back in May, I believe. We met at Fairmount Waterworks here in Philadelphia. I was number 5,642. And I recorded the conversation. So that's what this is. You're going to learn about Rob. You're going to learn about me. We're going to talk a little bit about connection and why we're doing these different projects that we do. I talk a little bit about my theater experience too. So that is really applicable right here as I'm going into my closing weekend of this show. So follow Rob. I'm going to put that information for where you can find him on all the socials. And he's still looking for people to connect with. So if you're interested in becoming one of the 10K friends, reach out to him. Such a cool guy. Really enjoyed getting to know him and, figuring out what this was all about. I had a couple friends who had met up with him before for this project. And it's just a really cool thing to do. We're so frequently connected to our phones, and I don't know about you, but I've been thinking a lot about how I'm either focusing backwards and getting worried about the past or getting worried about the future. And very seldom am I just very, very present and focusing on the connections right in front of me. So that's something I'm trying to be better about in 2024. And I think that's something that Rob is really managing to accomplish with his project as well. Just really spending an hour with a person and being present and learning about them learning about you. It's very wholesome and pure if you think about it. This was filmed. This was recorded in a park with my omnidirectional microphone. It is not going to be the best quality episode I've ever put out, but it's the content that matters, right? So I hope that you'll fight through some of the extra sounds that may be in the background. We're nice and organic here, people. So there's not really going to be like an introduction or an outro. It's, again, just very off the cuff. It is what it is. But that's why I wanted to save it for episode 100. So thank you for being here with me through 100 episodes, plus I think like 5 bonus episodes that I did early on when I started going solo with a podcast. Thank you also to Anna, again, who did the first 20 episodes with me and helped me to get this off of its feet. I don't know why this feels really monumental to me. I'm really excited about this. I just got really overwhelmed kind of with some emotions with the show going up for its final weekend, which has just been a beautiful experience, and the podcast being at 100. I guess I didn't realize how special it all felt, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And I'm going to cut to a quick commercial break, and then please enjoy my conversation with Rob of Rob's 10K Friends.
Once upon a time, there was a princess. She was the most beautiful girl in the world, and the smartest, and the bravest. And she ruled the kindest kingdom under heaven. She was Princess Emerald, and her kingdom was Virtue Vista Valley. And children all over the world tuned in daily to learn from her and Sam and all their faithful friends. And everyone loved her. And then someone came and took the princess away. And he made her into something else. Something different than a princess. He turned her into a thing. A thing that has haunted my dreams for the last 14 years. Because she wasn't just a princess to me. She was my sister. My name is Alex Carmichael, and this is Wrought of Amber, a show about the horror of loss. Wrought of Amber, a Weeping Cedars story, stars Renee Vito as Alex Carmichael, with Ashton Laurel as Grace, and Michaela Walsh as Emily Carmichael. The full season drops for patrons at patreon.com/weepingcedars at the end of November 2023, and weekly to the public during December. Be sure to follow Weeping Cedars on Patreon for the free accompanying short stories that release with each episode.
There's not really going to be an intro here. We're just recording and hoping that it picks us up. And if it does, then great. And if it doesn't, then, well...
Sweet.
It's a fun experiment anyway.
Does it do a good job of, like, picking up?
It should. Yeah, I have it on, so it has, like, an omni-directional thing.
Oh, cool.
And I really need to update microphones because I've been doing the podcast for almost 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And I still use this. I record like every episode from my bed. Like it's like the laziest podcast that you could do, really. But
yeah, well, that's like I do speaking engagements to support myself now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had no money for like the longest time because I've been doing this project full time for a long time. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, and there's always like all these like good microphones and stuff that you can get if you're presenting virtually. And I'm like, I'm gonna do the $15 ones that I get from Best Buy until I start making real money. So
yeah,
I'm always operating with like the minimal, just what it takes to get by.
That's exactly what I'm doing too. I just started doing a career switch.
Oh, okay.
So it's like I was moving up the ladder in the editing world, which is where I know Laura from.
Oh, okay, nice.
And then I decided to switch to real estate appraisal. Just 30s, switch career entirely, sure. And you know, I have to start at the bottom of the ladder again. So I get it. Yeah.
Did you move to? What caused the move to Philly? I guess.
Great question, and something that people always want to know. I was dating a guy. I met him when we were both working at Best Buy, actually.
Oh, okay.
In East Lansing. It was right after I had graduated from college, and he got into Penn Law.
Oh, okay.
So we moved, and that relationship didn't work out. But like my love for Philly is still here, and yeah. Are you from the Philly area, and then you go to Penn State? How did that?
Yeah, I grew up in like King of Prussia area.
Oh, that's near where I work, actually.
Okay, so I grew up in Norristown, which is like right next to it, and yeah, then I went to Penn State, so I was there for 4 years, and then home for 2 years, in the city for 2 years, back and forth between Philly and LA for 2 years,
wow.
Hoboken for 9 months, back home for most of the pandemic, and then back in the city since last January.
Okay.
So it's a year and a half.
Why all the moving? Is it for meeting different people, or was it like work related? What was the...
So I studied finance, and then I did consulting for Deloitte.
Okay.
So that's when I lived at home, and then I left Deloitte after a year and 3 months and took a job on 13th and Chestnut. So I moved into Northern Liberties for that job.
Yep.
So I was in Northern Liberties for 2 years, and I moved there June of 2015, and started this November 2015. And then 8 months later, that company was acquired, so I was laid off. So like, I had 11 months left on my lease, and that's when I jumped into this full-time July of 2016.
Okay.
And then finished out my lease, and then I knew I couldn't afford to rent and do it full-time. So my roommate from Penn State was living in LA, and he was like, if you want to come stay with me, I'll just host you, like you don't have to pay rent. So
that's cool.
I drove out there, and I lived there for the summer of 2017, and then he was like, you got to come back, and I was like, yeah, I have to come back. So I went home for 5 months for like weddings and bachelor parties and holidays, and then I went back out to LA the day after the Eagles Super Bowl parade, so I wasn't missing that. And then came back for weddings and holidays like the next summer, and then just went back one more time, and then that time that I was out there, my other friend and his wife were like, well, if you ever want to meet people in New York City, we have a space in Hoboken, so you can, like, my friend in LA had an extra bedroom, and then my friends in Hoboken had an extra bedroom. Okay. So it's just like they had the space.
That's really cool.
And I was just going because it was a free place for me to live. And like, I liked living with my friends, but I could meet people wherever, so I wasn't bound to a specific location.
And I was shocked too that like I assumed that this was something that you started like in the pandemic.
A lot of people do. Yeah.
And like I just, like, oh, we're all, missing out on connecting with people right now. Like, but it came like way before that.
Yeah, November 2015. So yeah, it's funny because I went virtual for the first time in the pandemic. Like I met 3,259 people in person before COVID.
All in Philly?
Like Philly, LA, and Hoboken. And then, I was in Hoboken when the pandemic started. And then switched to virtual. And then, like, soon enough, like, if you went far enough down my page, like, all you would see is virtual meetings.
I did do that.
So people were like, oh, he's meeting, like, you started this because we can't connect with each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it took a really long time to get here. But a lot of people, like, I guess it's hard to comprehend how much 10,000 hours is with people. So a lot of people are like, oh, what are you going to finish in like 2 years? And I'm like, probably 8, like if I'm lucky.
Well, okay, so musical theater reference.
Mm-hmm.
Rent 525,600 minutes in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that you'd have to do it full time, like not eating or sleeping or doing anything else for 2 full years, probably, if that number is actually correct. Yeah.
So there's like if I were to do 3 people a day, every day with no days off, like holidays or weekends, it would take 9.7 years.
Wow.
So if I'm at like 5,600. So if I do like 600 a year for the next like 7.5 years, then I'll finish by the time I'm 40. Yeah.
It's such a long time. But you love it, right? Like.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, this is like my job.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then like I'm just starting to get comfortable with speaking. I've done like probably like 50 speeches at this point, but I'm just starting to get like comfortable on stage. I spoke to a group of 2,000 last week. So.
Wow.
Yeah, and like that scared me a lot, so there's a lot of like anxiety tied with like when I would have to do gigs, and a lot of imposter syndrome, and like if this doesn't go well, then I'll never be able to like speak, and I'll never be able to afford to do this. And it is going well enough that I'm starting to believe that I'm a good speaker.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I like that. Like it's really cool to speak, and then you get all these messages from people afterwards. And last week was to FFA. It's like a high school, it's Future Farmers of America.
Yep, that's why.
But all the kids are like, I think they just see someone on stage and they're like, because afterwards they were like, that's the guy, like, let's get a picture with him. I was like, man, this is what celebrities must feel like. But they're like, it's just funny because, yeah, it's not like I'm like a celebrity or like an athlete. It's just, I think they see someone in a suit on stage and they're like, that person's important.
Well, it's also, if you think about in social media now, like if you're on the internet and you have a following,
sure,
you're a celebrity basically.
Sure.
So I mean, if you got that blue check mark, it's you're worthy of meeting, I guess. It's kind of weird how that works. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting nowadays too. I don't know if you follow like the Twitter blue check marks or like.
I intentionally have completely avoided it.
Okay, yeah, it's. Because on Twitter, if you pay $8 a month, you can have the blue check mark. So it basically, like, it ruined the whole idea of having, like, a check mark.
Verified is what it means. Yeah.
And then Facebook started doing that as well, where, like, you can pay for it. So now it's, like, less cool because it's, like, I don't want to look like I'm paying for status.
Did you have it before it was cool, though?
Yeah,
See, there you go.
But no one knows, you know?
I just put it on the bio.
Yeah, had it before.
meeting 10,000 friends, also
verified
I had
on this
verified
day,
before it was cool, yeah.
But, yeah, it's cool. So, I do love it. So the idea of doing this for 8 more years is like, I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Wow. And do you consider yourself an extrovert then?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not like a, super animated extrovert. Yeah. Very much like a sit back, like, chill,
take it all in. So this is good for you because you're just like, okay, I'm gonna meet people and then I'm gonna get energy and yeah, that's the opposite of me. I'm like, all right, it's time to go to bed now.
Okay. So would you say you're like an extroverted introvert?
Yes. So I actually was talking to my family. I was back home in Michigan, and my mom was like, out of the 5 of us, you're definitely the most extroverted.
Okay.
And I was like, I would say that's true, but when it comes to like the definition of how do you recharge is absolutely 100% by myself. Yeah. But I love people. Like, I'm a theater person. Like, you can't not love people if you're a theater person. So
yeah, that's cool.
Goes with the territory of connecting with people, making stories for people, all of that good stuff. But
so when you were in school, did you study straight theater or musical theater?
Musical theater.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So I decided to go to school for theater when I was 17. They shouldn't let 17-year-old make decisions.
Sure.
But so I ended up going to school for musical theater, doing that for 2 years, and my parents were like, you gotta go back up.
Okay.
And I was like, okay.
English.
Okay.
And my parents were like, not what we had in mind, but like, okay.
Sure.
But I did use both of those degrees, and I do use both of those degrees. I was in the academic publishing world for almost 8 years, I guess it was, from being here and when I moved to Philly, because I moved in 2014. And
so
then,
is that how you know Laura?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I know Laura through. Well, it's funny because she's also from Michigan.
Okay.
And we kind of had we worked at the same company, and when I moved there, I was like, I'm from Michigan, and people were like, oh, there's this other girl who's from Michigan, you should meet her.
Okay.
And we met once, and then we kind of had friend crushes on each other from afar for 2 years.
Okay.
And we were just like, I really want to be friends with that person, and she went to school in the same town where I'm from.
Okay.
And we were there at the same time, so I'm sure there's some crossover.
Sure.
But one day it was my farewell happy hour for the company, and we were both very intoxicated. Okay. And I was just like, I've wanted to be your friend for years, and she was like, I've wanted to be your friend for and now we're friends. I just saw her Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So,
nice.
Yeah. So, but it's great because I use the editing. I used the English degree for all of the editing stuff, and then I did the acting in the area semi-professionally, but kind of realized that I really liked stability and food.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick with doing this full time, and I kind of let theater go for a while.
Okay.
Did a show every few years or so, and then I kind of had this during the pandemic had this quarter life crisis. I don't know, I was 30, so
sure.
And was like, I need to do something different. I'm miserable in academia, and I just can't do it anymore. So I ended up taking a bunch of courses, and I hit rock bottom in my personal life.
Okay. And
then I ended up quitting my job and getting this new job in commercial real estate appraisal. Okay. Which is a lot of finance. Okay. And at around the same time, I ended up, there's a theater just down the street from my house, and I was like, if it's right there, it won't be too much of a commute. I can just walk home in 3 minutes afterwards. I'll audition. I auditioned. That's where I met Zoe. Okay. And just met the best group of people doing the show this past January. Okay. And my life has very much, I was like, I'm going to stay away from the theater and all of that stuff, and I don't want to market myself or be an entrepreneur or anything like that. And 10 years later, I've still kind of ended up back there. Yeah. Because I'm, doing the real estate appraisal thing, and I, want to do that for a while. And I also want to, work on my podcast. I love just talking to people and learning from people. I always say, experts and storytellers. You can learn a lot from somebody who has a PhD, but you can also learn a lot from somebody who's been through a lot. Yeah. And I'm also, working to get my certification in intimacy coordination. So that's been really rewarding, and I love it. It's kind of the mixture of, all of my interests, which is, human connection and consent in the theater spaces. And, I could go on and on. I'm such a nerd about those types of things. So, but
how do you define intimacy coordination?
Yeah. So how when there's a fight scene on stage or in a movie, somebody has to choreograph that and make sure that everybody's being safe. Yeah. So in the wake of the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a push to make sure that actors were safer. And so an intimacy coordinator, and it's not just physical either, they will help to choreograph. A couple months ago, I helped 2 younger actors do their first stage kiss. Okay. Which, I've done, and it's the most awkward thing in the world, and so you just kind of have to look at how awkward it is. Yeah. But yeah, so you choreograph it, but you also are checking in, making sure that people are safe. Where is it okay for this person to touch you? Where is it not okay? So it's a lot of boundary setting and checking in emotionally, even if there's a scene where there's a sexual assault or something like that. Or somebody's having a flashback trigger of some kind. Sure. You want them to feel safe in that space. So it always
intimacy coordination falls under the theater umbrella?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, there are lots of people who take the classes. In my course right now, there are people who are in the entertainment industry, but there are also people who are like in corporate.
Okay.
Because it's just, and I read this article actually online where it was this woman and she said, I took an intimacy coordination class to learn to say no. And that was what we did in our first class, was like, saying no is really hard.
Yeah.
So we did that for like 30 minutes, just, somebody asking us something like, do you want to go to the movies? And just saying no.
Okay. Gotcha.
It sounds like really rudimentary, but if it were actually as easy, Me Too wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and there wouldn't be courses on it.
Exactly. So it's been really, I want to do that. I want to do the podcast. I want to do theater. And the group of people that I did that show with, a few months ago, we still text every day.
Nice.
And we are writing stuff because we kind of want to start our own theater projects, because if the opportunities aren't knocking on your door, you have to go out and get them, and there's a limited amount of opportunities, so it's, why not make your own?
Yeah.
So we're doing some really cool stuff.
What was that company again?
That was Old Academy Players.
Oh, okay.
It's up in East Falls. It's actually the theater where Grace Kelly got her acting start.
Oh, okay. Nice.
It's very stage.
Old Academy Players?
Old Academy Players.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the only theater in East Falls.
And what was the show you all did together?
It was Miss Bennett, Christmas at Pemberley.
Missy Bennett.
Miss Bennett, Christmas at Pemberley.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So, like, it's a sequel to, like, Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, okay.
And it features the, instead of the main character being Elizabeth and Darcy, it's the middle sister who is completely forgotten over the course of the novel, Mary, who Zoe was.
Okay.
And it's kind of about her coming into her own and learning that maybe there is somebody compatible.
Gotcha.
It's exactly how you think that a holiday show is going to go, but
yeah,
it's heartwarming.
I think I met her like right at as she was leaving, or
maybe. Yeah, she's in New York now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I just saw her too on Saturday.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Laura, Zoe, and I were all in the same room on Saturday.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Do you ever feel like, sometimes I feel exhausted doing this, but that's not the case for you?
I think I can feel like there was a time when I was meeting 5 people a day, and that was a bit much.
Yeah.
The exhaustion of my life is not from meeting people, it's from the lack of stability as a result of trying to meet people full time. So, like right now, for example, my speaking, I've done like 37 paid engagements in the last 2 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah, which is nice. But I've a portion goes to rent and like healthcare and all this stuff, and then I've invested about 20% of that back into going to a speaker boot camp and getting my website and my demo reel, all. It's like if you play Monopoly, when you're trying to buy up your properties and you're like, man, I don't know if I have enough money to buy this property, but I'm gonna do it in the hopes that people land here, and then I'm better off for it. I'm in that stage right now.
Lots of risk taking.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to pay rent in the next 6 months, but if I land the speaking engagements, which will happen, then I'll be okay. But there's also always the possibility that it doesn't happen, and that's where the fear and exhaustion comes from.
The not knowing.
Yeah, because I still have to until it's real and in my hands, having an engagement and being paid from it, I have to live my life as if I'll never be paid again. So I'm in that stage right now where my friends are let's go golfing, and I'm sorry, I can't. Or let's go to this concert, you guys have fun, which has been the last 7 years. And I think the exhausting part was I felt like I was finally out of that, and then by making the investments I put myself back into it.
Yep.
But all that being said, if we were talking next year, I'm sure I'll be yeah, everything's going great.
Yeah.
So, but I'm kind of excited about that too, to have that Monopoly property.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Monopoly is as basic investing as you can do, really.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, I don't know, I'm a very pragmatic person, and it scares the shit out of me to not know. But I don't know. If there's a time in your life to do it, it's now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the way that I look at it.
Yeah.
So.
And it's like, as soon as it clicks, like, everything becomes worth it.
And it clicks, when it clicks fast.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in the speaking world is crazy. Like, I know, like, the girl who got me into speaking, I met her in 2019. Mm-hmm. And she was doing it for 3 years, and she was like, I charge an average of $17,000 per speech now, and I'm speaking 70 times this year. And I was like, all right, that's pretty good. So I'm like, I couldn't have made jumps that big in 3 years in consulting or investment banking or corporate finance. And so it's like the hockey stick curve, I hope. So
that's the idea. Once it's up, it's up.
Yeah, but yeah, even that, like, as exhausting as it is, I like it too, because it's like, again, like playing a board game. It's like that struggle of, like, am I moving the right pieces at the right times?
Yeah.
And, like, it's kind of fun to me.
It's kind of funny, though. I've noticed that, you know, in a similar situation, that things just kind of happen right when you need them to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you ever find that?
Yeah. I always look back and I'm like, if this never happened, I would have been so screwed.
Yeah.
But it did.
Just falls into your lap.
Yeah.
Like, I one of my side gigs ended a couple of weeks ago. 2 days later, I got a message from somebody on backstage being like, you know, hey, this opportunity, you know, pay this much. And I was just like, just finished this one. And I was a little worried. And now this one is just, it's funny how it just kind of...
Universe provides.
It really does. It really does. It's terrifying. But I don't know. It's kind of exciting too, I guess.
What was the origin of your interest in theater?
Oof, I think I was like born into it.
Okay.
My mom and her sisters are singers. Not professionally, but they grew up singing, and so I grew up with watching musical theater, Oklahoma, Carousel, like all the Rodgers and Hammerstein stuff. And then, you know, I wanted to do theater, but I kind of just did like church stuff here and there, because that was what was available to me. And then, you know, there was in like a choir class that we were taking in like the 5th grade or something. There was a solo, and I auditioned for it, and that was the moment where I stopped being the nerdy kid that everybody liked to pick on, and everybody was like, oh, she can sing. So it's kind of, I don't know, that moment kind of made me realize, like, oh, like, people actually do want to, this isn't just something that I do, like, when I'm cleaning my room, it's something that I actually can do and people want to hear. And, you know, that led to doing as many shows as I could, and then auditioning for musical theater schools, which is crazy and really difficult in and of itself, to doing shows, to, I don't know, like, ending up here and doing some semi-professional stuff, but it doesn't need to be professional for me to love it. Yeah. And that's the thing, is I don't want to do theater to put food on the table, because I want it to maintain its magic. Yeah. And if I'm using it to provide for myself, then I feel like the magic is gone. And it's not that way for everything in life, but for theater, I don't know, it's almost like a sacred feeling of being on stage, and especially with singing for me in particular. Singing is above all else, it feels like an out-of-body experience where I just like transcend. So, I always say that it's the moment that I'm the most religious is when I'm singing. So.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
So singing was the most important thing, and theater just happened to be a channel through which you could sing.
I liked the idea to create stories of people, and I love the idea, you know, a lot of people tell me, you know, I just tell you the truth, I'm not really in musical theater, and I go, totally okay, let me explain it to you. The way I look at it is that it's all about feelings, right? So like when you are feeling something so intensely and you're talking to somebody in a scene and like you're feeling and like words just can't cut it anymore, so you burst into song, which like people don't do in real life. I do, but like you know, yeah. But my mom always used to tell me when I got my license, she was like, listen to anything. You can listen to, like, rap. You can listen to rock and roll. Like, she was like, you're not allowed to listen to musical theater. She was like, you will be driving, and you will get so emotional singing along, and you will crash, and you will die. And she is correct that would probably definitely happen.
Yeah.
It hasn't stopped me, though.
Yeah. That's cool. I like musical theater.
Do you?
Yeah.
What's your favorite musical?
I was in West Side Story when I was a senior in high school.
Were you a Jet?
I was. How did you know?
I could see you as Riff. You kind of look like the guy who played Riff in, like, the original.
Yeah, I was Snowboy.
Snowboy.
Yeah, just in the background. But it was great. Like, I went to a small Catholic school in the suburbs, and I always tell people it was like High School Musical, because I played soccer all 4 years, and then it was like senior year. I'd liked musicals throughout. My sister was like a dancer throughout life, and then she, like, we would watch like Phantom of the Opera together and Rent. So I would go see the shows, and then just senior year was like, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then other soccer players, independently of me, were like, we're gonna do it too. So they just had a desire. And then some of the guys from the football team were doing it, and girls from the volleyball team. And it was like, there was no like sports versus theater people. It was like everyone just had a ton of fun together. So it was awesome. Yeah, I had a great time. So that one, I don't know if it's my favorite. It's definitely like has a special place because it's the only one that I performed in.
Right. And that makes a difference.
Probably like Phantom of the Opera.
Oh yeah.
Is the one that I have like the earliest memories tied to.
Rest in peace.
Was that?
Because it just after like however many years it's off Broadway now, as of like last month.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, that, and then I guess Rent as well. Like, those were the two that I remember watching on the movies.
Those are solid ones.
It just clicked for me within like the last year that the girl from Shameless was in Phantom of the Opera.
Yep. I mean, you're awesome. Which I haven't seen I haven't seen Shameless because I don't like her in Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, okay.
Which is like, she was 16. Like, I need to like
oh wow, that's young.
cut her a break. But I was like, I don't like her. I'm probably just jealous. But, you know, accepting it is the first step, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, it was great. And then the girl that I dated, she moved to New York after school and then like tried to do the whole thing, and she was Maria in West Side Story up in Algonquin.
Oh, cool.
And then I think she did it in Orlando, and then she did the Fantastics in North Carolina.
Yeah.
That was a cool show.
Fantastics is a cool show. It's a weird show.
Yeah, it was weird.
It's a little weird.
And I think Zoe told me about the 25th annual Putnam.
Oh yeah, that's at the Arden right now.
Yeah, so I'm going to see it with my family because she told me about it.
Oh, fun!
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to text her.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a cute show.
Yeah, I saw it in college because I took theater when I was a freshman as just like an elective, and then I took it as a senior as another elective. So we had to like see it during that or whatever. But yeah.
It's a solid one of the newer musical theater ones. There are a few songs that I can't listen to because I always cry. And the mom and dad one at the end of that show, I can't it comes on in the car and I'm like, nope, can't do it, can't listen to it. It's the I Love You song.
I can't remember it.
Well, you'll see it soon.
Yeah.
And then you'll be like, oh, this is the one.
Yeah.
And then you'll cry and you'll be like, she was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a favorite show?
Well, right now it is 6.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I've always had a fascination. My dad's a historian, my mom's a writer. And I've always had a fascination with Tudor history.
Okay.
Since I was like 10, because I was weird. I didn't do any sports. It was theater and history and music and all of that stuff. And yeah, I was fascinated by this king who chopped all his wives' heads off. And then a few years ago, actually, this relates to Laura, because she's also super into theater and she's also super into Tudor history, which is one of the reasons why we were like, we need to be friends.
Yeah.
But we worked at the same place, and so I found out that there was this new musical in 2018 or something called Six, which is a pop musical about the wives of King Henry VIII. Each of the songs is based off of a like pop queen, like Ariana Grande, Alicia Keys, like that type of thing. And so I remember I was at work, and I like messaged her on like our work thing, and I was like, you have to listen to this, and like she didn't respond fast enough, so I like popped my head up and I was like, Laura, check Slack. She was like, what? And she was like, oh my God. Silent office, we're having this this conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen it multiple times. I've performed songs from it, and it's a mixture of all. I was a little angry when it became big, because I have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about liking things first.
Sure.
That blue check mark, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I've grown to really, when I saw it the last time in Philly a couple months ago, I got really emotional because there were so many little girls there who were getting to see the stories of these women outside of the context of like a man.
Yeah.
And who were so excited about history and were excited to, sing like these queens, and it just the confidence that like I wish I had that musical when I was that age, because like the confidence that like I saw instilling in little girls, I was just like, ugh. So I've softened a little bit on my I was into it first stance.
Like you can let other people have it.
I was like, all right.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's a process for sure.
Yeah. I've heard of that one. I've not seen it.
It's really good. Highly recommend.
But yeah, I think it's interesting, like being a straight white dude from the suburbs of Philly, like you don't really pay attention to representation because you've had it your whole life. And I think I've gained a great appreciation for it through my project of like genders, backgrounds, sexualities, races, like all this stuff. So I look for that too. Like Encanto, when that came out, and like people were like, there's a character that I see myself in.
It's really heartwarming.
Special.
It makes you go, oh, like I've always had those characters. And you try to imagine what it feels like, and yeah, it's pretty incredible. And that's what art should do. I'm of the opinion that art should make us uncomfortable. Art should make us look inside. But it should also bring us, I don't know, it should be like a balm of some sort to make us feel more connected to each other. Ultimately, which is why like some of the projects that came out during the pandemic virtually were so cool. People, I saw a few play readings that were virtual, and people get creative.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely, I'm a huge nerd about the musicals and about stuff. But I've grown an appreciation for the straight shows too. So
yeah, they're
it's
cool.
I don't know.
So you were in publishing for 8 years, you said?
Yeah.
So when did you move to Philly?
Moved to Philly 2014.
Okay.
And was in publishing up until January of 2022.
Okay.
Across 2 different companies, both of which I worked with Laura at.
Okay.
I think that the hardest thing that I've ever done was moving to Philadelphia, but the second hardest thing I've ever done was completely switching careers, and I've had to fight off a lot of imposter syndrome. Sure. Because my story was always, that I told myself was, I'm a theater and an English person, I'm not good at math. And, I'm having to do a lot of math now, and fighting a lot of demons through the process. But no, it's good, and when it's a lot of writing, and when you feel like it clicks, it like really clicks.
I always tell people, like, because people are always like, what have you learned, like, theme-wise from people?
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
I always say the biggest thing is no one really knows what they're doing with their lives. Everyone's just doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And I told that to these teens because they're like, you were saying, like, 17-year-olds shouldn't make decisions on their future. And it's like this weird expectation, I think, that people assume you decide who you are at 18, you educate yourself on that for 4 years, you come out at 22, and you are that person linearly for the rest of your life.
I don't know anybody who, like, works that way.
Exactly, but I feel like we all have this pressure on ourselves to work that way. So, I talk to so many people who are in, like, their 40s who are switching careers, and, like, their 50s and 60s, and it's like, I like it, because I'm like, I feel like tomorrow I could be like, I'm done with this project, I'm going to go pursue acting or whatever. And like I feel permission to be able to do that because I'm like, no one else knows what they're doing. So
that's a really good way of looking at it. So is that like, I don't know, the best, that's not advice you've gotten. Have you gotten any like advice that really has like resonated with you that like haunts you as you fall asleep at night?
Not from my project. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm sure, like, if I dove into it, that's the issue with me. Like, I'm a very, like, I like reading the book. I don't like doing the book report. So, like, I like doing the project. I don't so much like when I have to write new speeches and stuff. It requires a lot of effort for me to really dig into what I've learned.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, talking to, like, new parents, for example, who are like, I don't know, they send you home with the baby and you feel like you should have, like, a guidebook or something. And I'm like, that's good to know. I'll mark that down. Or when people lose family members and they're like, here's the grief community that's really helping me. Or like, people who are going through depression, I always ask them, what are the steps you took to, like, help you get to a better place? And I'm always asking people, because I'm like, I'm collecting your wisdom for when it may apply to my life.
Yeah.
But I think the best, unrelated to the project, I took a business law class at Penn State.
Okay.
And our professor said never pick a fight with someone who has nothing to lose. And I think way too many people pick fights with people who have nothing to lose. And it's like, what are you gaining by that? Like, there's the satisfaction that you served your ego, that you won the fight or whatever, but, like, you drag yourself down. So I think that's helped make me, like, a more, not that I was confrontational before, but I just, if anyone was ever to, like, comment negatively on my page or anything like that, I'm like, whatever, like,
yeah,
it's just not worth it. So yeah,
or like having, like, this, I mean, I have, like, radical empathy. If, like, somebody, like, cuts me off in traffic, I'm always like, maybe they just got fired, I don't know.
It's a good way to think.
There you go.
Yeah,
have a nice day.
Yeah, I think, like, you can literally change the world by, like you can change your version of the world by shifting your perspective.
Totally. And I think that the perspective that nobody knows what they're doing is really comforting. You're right, it, like, gives you the freedom, but it also, I don't know, it's a weird, I kind of lost my train of thought, but
yeah, well, it's, like, comforting to know that you're not the only one.
Exactly.
That feels that way, and I think...
Exactly. And when something goes wrong, or, like, when somebody, like, treats you poorly, you just kind of have to be like, people can only meet you as far as they've met themselves. They're doing the best that they can. You know, it's not up to, like, what your standard might be for how you want to be treated, and that is your job to be able to advocate for yourself and ask for how you want to be treated, but that person has the right to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And, you know, understanding that they're not doing it to be malicious or anything. It's really, everybody's really just trying to operate the best that they can.
You could, like, probably go back to a moment in their life where it's like hurt people. Yep. So, yeah, I think I've had so many times, like, I remember meeting a girl from my project in Old City. I think we met in Old City at this bar. And I was like, oh, she's, like, probably grew up in the suburbs, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was starting to write her story in my mind. And as I talked, she was talking about how she worked with people, I forget, like, she worked with people who had, like, maybe struggled with addiction or something like that, or had been in hard circumstances, because she was like, I was there myself. And when she was 14, she was gang raped. And, like, from that, she went into, like, this depression and went into addiction with cocaine to cope with it, and,
of course. Yeah.
Like, brought herself out of that and then started to help other people. And for me, it was like a punch in the gut, because I was like, wow, here I was, like, thinking I knew this person's story. So I think about that all the time. It's always jarring when you come across someone's story, and, like, even people, like, I don't know, if your coworkers are, like, the happiest people, and then you find out they've been through some crazy stuff in their life. Yeah.
No, definitely, and I think that's what's so interesting about, like, with the work that I do at the podcast is I have the beautiful opportunity of having these experts on, and they're telling me about their work, and I'm like, just asking for a friend, you know.
Yeah.
What would you say about this situation or this situation? But the other part of it is just how, like, truly enraptured I can get in, like, one person's. I interviewed this incredible woman. It wasn't even like an interview. I just feel like I just, like, sat there, like, listening. It was kind of similar to, like, what you just talked about with that. And I mean, my heart just, like, broke
for her and for everything that she had been through. And I also, like, it goes along with everybody's just doing the best that they can. Like, everybody has, like, their thing that, like, really they're struggling with, or that they feel out of place with, or whatever it might be. It's just interesting to kind of, like, compare notes on, like, what you process through meeting people, because, you know, I'm also meeting people not at the same rate that you are. It sounds like you're doing multiple a day. Yeah. Which would wipe me out. But being able to do it, you know, a few times a week. Yeah. And then I just am like, jeez, like, people are so inspiring. Just in what they do on a day-to-day basis. That's really incredible.
Yeah, that's why I think intentional connection is so special. I think podcasting is a great way to do it. I always tell people, like, I encourage people to set, like, a connection goal for themselves. Whatever it may be. Like, you have one in your podcast, I have one in my project. And because we have a goal, it, like, creates this, like, context out of thin air. Right. That, like, you're willing to sit down with me to be part of my project, and, like, I and other people are willing to sit down with you and be part of your podcast. Like, it's not like a company is running it or anything like that. It's just we made up the context, but you get all the benefit of chatting with people because you have, like, some goal connection.
Yeah, it's like a built-in. It's built. You don't have to work because it's just something that you're already doing. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. And do you feel like there was, like, in terms of your project, do you feel like there was, like, a lightning strike moment that really hit you, where you were like, I'm going to do this? Or was it something that kind of, like, happened slowly? I'm just wondering how, like, the idea sparked.
When I was at Deloitte, so I minored in entrepreneurship. Okay. So I've always been interested in doing my own thing, and when I was at Deloitte, like, I was getting paid well, and I had a girlfriend, and they were going to pay for me to get my MBA, so it was, like, checking all the right boxes. And I wasn't happy, so particularly from, like, the career standpoint, I was just like, I want to do something that will help me escape this. And I was, like, thinking of art projects and different things, and I'd been really involved at Penn State because it's such a big school. So I wanted to get back to, like, where I would run into people that I knew on the streets. Yeah. Because I had that so much in college, and then I didn't have it afterwards. And January of 2014, I wrote in my iPhone notes, like, I'm going to meet 10,000 people in 1 year for 10 minutes at a time. Terrible idea. It would never have worked. But I think, like, to me, because people are always like, oh, why did you choose 10,000? I'm like, I think it was just, in my mind, like, a big enough number that it was going to turn people's heads, or it was going to, like, intrigue people. So, I thought I was going to do it for, like, 10 minutes at a time, and then it sat in my iPhone notes for a while. And then I left Deloitte to go to the tech startup, and I think I had, like, some type of feeling about going from, like, this really prestigious firm to this, like, startup where, like, we were all kind of, like, misfits from different places coming to work in sales at this place. And I was just journaling, like, how I felt about that. And I only did 3 entries, but the second one I wrote, my ability to meet people is what will take me to where I want to go, or something like that. Oh. And when I was going to write the 3rd journal entry, I reread the second one, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, this is a strength of mine. And I thought back to that idea, and because I was doing 30-minute sales calls, I was like, well, I don't want to do 10 minutes. I want to do an hour with people, so there's time to, like, really dive into who they are. Yeah. So that was, like, the lightning strike. It was like September of 2015, and then I just started messaging people, and then the first person met me in November of 2015. I only met one person that entire month, and then I met 3 people that December and 3 that January. So now I'm, like, trying to meet 3 people a day, and I was meeting 5 people a day. It's, like, a very well-oiled machine at this point. Yeah. But back then it was, like, a really slow start. Yeah. And now it's my full identity, where when people think of me, they think of the project and stuff. But
how does that feel?
It feels good because it feels authentic to me. Good. Like, when people thought of, like, me versus Deloitte me were, like, 2 different versions of me existing at the same time, and me and Project Me are the same me.
Just felt like you were, like, a contradiction. Like, who you were, like, internally and what you were doing didn't mesh.
Yeah, it was like at Deloitte it's more of, like, a stuffy environment. Like, I'm an adult, like,
very corporate.
Yeah, like, I think now, I don't know if you could have a beard back then or not, but
Now you probably could.
Yeah, now I'm sure you could. I didn't have one. Like, that was the only, once I went to the tech startup, is one, when I could start growing a beard, and like two, when I, like,
When you could start growing a beard.
yeah, when I stopped shaving it. So, yeah, it was just like, I remember them being like, you can't grow a beard on client's time. I think it was like, you could go in with a beard, or you go in clean shaven, but you can't like go through a stubble stage to a beard at a client site. So it was like that, like old school corporate
People
stuff.
are ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, no, I get it. That corporate world. When I left that behind, I was like, no, this is way not me. And now I work for a small company, and my boss comes to my shows.
Nice.
You know, like it's really a much better fit. I don't know. I'm from the Midwest, and connecting is so important. You know, my boyfriend, he is an immigrant. I'm not going to say exactly where he's from when I'm recording, because
Sure.
I like to protect his privacy on the podcast.
Sure.
But yeah, we've had a lot of discussions about that, and about leaving the corporate world behind, and I don't know, we're both kind of like artsy and do more of the connective things. He connects for work, and you know, I do that in my spare time.
Yeah.
For the podcast. So it's been really, really cool to just kind of talk to different people about what the projects are. And you know, I mean, do you find that like people know people, and do you get in contact with people that way? How is the
how I meet people?
yeah, how you meet people to meet people, I guess. How you connect.
Like, how do I set up my meetings for my project?
Right. Like, do you... Is it... People come to you to be...
For the most part, it's ebbed and flowed. Like, a couple weeks ago was like, if anyone knows people in Philly, let me know, because I want to get back to in-person. Because I was still stuck in this. Everyone was reaching out virtually. And I want to be, like... COVID is no longer this world emergency.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be sitting in my apartment every day.
I know.
Although I do like talking to people from other countries and stuff.
That is really cool.
But yeah, and I think the way that Instagram has changed too, like I think that I had more like engagement and reach in like 2017 than I do now. Just because it's like more saturated, and if you're not doing like the reels, like I don't know, I just think it's like, and I'll get like, I've had times where I've had 1,000 messages in a day to reach out or to meet, and then I have times where I'll get like 2 in a week. So
that's so weird.
And it's this game, because even if 1,000 people are reaching out at one time, I can't meet all of them.
Right,
so like,
right.
I'll probably meet 100 to 200 of those 1,000, and then the other 800 are like, by the time I get back to them, they're like, "Who are you?" So, because people get excited in the moment, like they'll see a friend post, or they'll see like a news article or something, and in that moment they'll be excited and reach out, and then it passes. So some people will like continue to follow up, but I think the majority, it's like heat of the moment type thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I am always stunned by how not great people's memories are. Like continuously.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have gotten back to people, and they're like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Oh, well, you reached out to me. It was a while ago," and but a lot of people find me through people that I've met.
Right.
So the word of mouth is really strong. It's probably been the biggest thing, and yeah, it's been a while since I've done like I did a thing with 60-second docs, which is like an online media thing. A lot of people found me through that recently.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's cool that things just kind of like fall into your lap too. Like.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that one fell into my lap in 2018, and then like the guy that I was coordinating everything with like stopped communicating with me. He was like, "Hey, I got sick," and like all the videographers that got put on long-term projects, and I was like, "Wow, that happened really fast." So, and then he stopped answering me. I was like, did I say something to this guy? So I would just send them updates on my project for years, and from 2018 until a few months ago, they finally were like, "Hey, like we went back through our DMs and saw your thing." So, and the story came out, but...
Now, is that already out, like, published? And
Yeah. So they're like
cool.
an Instagram account that they do 1-minute documentaries on interesting stories.
That's really... Oh, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah,
I don't know if
it's
I've
kind of
heard
similar to like Now This, if you've seen them.
Yes.
They did a piece on me in 2019. Yeah, that was like the same week Now This posted about me. I was on Kelly Clarkson's talk show, like it aired.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that was like a big rush of people. That was like the last like big rush.
Big rush of, yeah. People being like, oh, I want to, yeah.
Aside from like TikTok, when people, back when that was like a thing where you'd put out a video and it would go viral like every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
I try so hard.
Uh-huh.
My TikTok presence is... I like told a story, which is actually the impetus story for the podcast.
Okay.
And I was like, this is gonna be huge. It's gonna be huge. And it got more than I thought that it would.
Sure.
But I was like, this was supposed to be the next like big thing that was supposed to blow up, and it didn't. So.
Yeah, it's a whole mental journey too when you get something like that and you expect things to change and it's like a little blip, and then
It feels like you're always like waiting for like that one thing to like fit into place to make things shift.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a fun waiting game. It takes work and it takes organization. I mean, I don't know how you organize everything, but I have spreadsheets on spreadsheets on spreadsheets for
I've got many Google Sheets for speaking.
Okay.
The project is all like, it's just Instagram DMs and
That's so cool.
yeah,
Do you keep a planner?
just Google Calendar.
Look at you.
That's like my
That's
thing.
impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish that I could be a little more chill about that, but I have like a paper planner. I have a shared Google Calendar with my friends, the theater group. Like we were even talking about, we were like, we should really just make a shared calendar.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fun.
Mine is very like, it's kind of, I'll show it to you. I know you won't be able to see this in the podcast, but...
Yeah, it's all good. Oh my gosh, I almost bought that phone case.
Oh, really?
Yeah, green's my favorite color, and I like love that like dusty blue green kind of.
It's a good one. This is how I manifest wealth in my life, is having a green.
There you go.
So you can kind of like see
Oh yeah.
what my schedule, and then like I keep open slots so I know when it's open, and then as I schedule someone, I'll just delete that slot and add
Okay.
it.
Put the information in.
Yeah,
It's a good system.
yeah. So it works. It's like worked for like, yeah, it's crazy. Like the project has not really changed in 5,600 people in terms of like the operation of it.
Do you see people out and about in Philly?
Yeah, my next door neighbor got me my apartment because he was part of my project.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. And like I mean, there's so many names that you're meeting. Do you tend to remember the names, or is it more like a faces?
There are definitely people that I'll forget, and sometimes people come up to me and be like, I was part of your project, and then once we talk, I'm like, oh yeah,
it's
I
all coming
remember.
back.
Yeah. But yeah, sometimes I pass people and I'm like, do I know them from a party? Are they part of my project? I don't know. And sometimes people, I had a meeting the other day where I thought this girl walking down the street was looking at me, so I waved at her because I was like, I don't remember if she's part of my project or not, but I don't want her to
Better
feel...
safe than sorry.
Yeah, and then she wasn't looking at me, so I just waved to a stranger. So
Maybe you made her day.
yeah.
Who knows?
But yeah, I run into people a lot, and then I keep in touch with people, and
That's so cool.
yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of people that I haven't seen or talked to since then, but that's why I like being in the Philly area, because like when I talked about wanting to get back to running into people, like Penn State, I have that now.
Right.
And if I go to LA, I'll run into people.
Yeah.
If I'm in Hoboken, I'll run into people.
Yeah, no, that's the cool part about living in a city, I think. And you don't have that in other places unless
Yeah.
you're in like a small town. But it's oh, I have a question, and
Sure.
maybe it's a one that you are not prepared to answer because it involves looking ahead, which is scary.
Sure.
But what happens after 10K?
Well, I'm speaking now, so I plan to speak until the end of time. And like the guy that I met earlier today is also a speaker, and we were like, it's a great career path because you can throttle it up or down
Yeah.
depending on how much you want to do. Like it's harder to travel with a wife and kids and stuff, so he's doing like 2 gigs a month now, whereas before he was doing like over 100 in a year. So yeah, speaking, and then I think I would like to be a professor at a university.
Oh, okay.
And teach a first-year course where students pair off one-on-one every class period.
So would that be like a communications course, do you think?
Whatever the university needs to call it to make it work.
Okay.
Call it like interpersonal communications or
Yeah,
whatever.
I like that.
But yeah, I just wanted people to do this so they can gain what you're gaining from listening to people in the podcast setting, and what I'm gaining from listening to people and just chatting with them. And I want to facilitate connections, because, you know, I have to take like gen ed classes. Like, my class may not be the most valuable class, but it definitely won't be the least valuable, because they'll leave with connections that outlast their time in the classroom.
Yeah, no, totally. And I like that idea.
Yeah, so speaking, professor, wife and kids, whatever else piques my interest.
That's the big picture.
For now, yeah. So, and I acknowledge that 8 years from now I could be like totally different path.
You never know.
Yeah.
You really, really never know. And I
Yeah.
think that's the scary thing about it, as somebody who fights against change with every breath. And then, you know, the kind of exciting thing too is that you never know how you're going to change,
Yeah.
or who's going to be there along the way. So
So,
definitely interesting.
and what do you see? I'll do like, what's like the next few years for you? Because
Yeah.
you've stepped into this commercial real estate appraisal.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, so my 20s were all about relationships. I was just in a series of like long-term relationships, like 2 years, 4 years, you know, and very much like a long-term relationship person. And most of my 20s was overcoming a lot of like trauma, really like intense stuff that back then was like debilitating. And so when people are like, oh, I want to be 21 again, I'm like, I don't want to be 21 again. So, you know, finally I got to a point where I was single for a long period of time. For the first time, I was like, I'm going to stay single for a full year.
Okay.
And that was September 2021 to September 2022.
Okay.
And I was like, and I don't want to focus on any of that. I want to focus on what I want, because I'm such a person who thinks about what other people want all the time. And so I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I said to my friends, I was like, we're going to pretend that I'm never going to be in a relationship again. They're like, that's ridiculous. Of course. I was like, I know. But for the sake of argument, let's say that I'm never going to be in a relationship again. What am I going to do with my time? And I figured it out, you know. I figured out what I want, and I know that I want to do podcasting. I know that I want to do the intimacy coordinator stuff. I know that I want to have the stability of my appraisal job. I want to be a storyteller, like, first and foremost, and I also want to foster dogs.
Okay. Nice.
So it's kind of a big picture of things, and then, you know, of course, things fall into your lap when you're not expecting them to. And after my year of taking off dating, you know, within 2 weeks I had met someone. So I don't know, like, that's a part of my life, but after such a strong focus on relationships, romantic relationships in my 20s, like, if I could go back and tell my younger self something, they'd be like, no, just focus on like what you want for like, the 20s, which I feel like a lot of people do, but I just I had a lot of stuff to work through and overcome in that realm of my life. So it was that 1 year of just really focusing on myself, not even thinking about dating, not even thinking about anything other than like, what do I want, you know. And because there were a lot of things that I was like, if I was in a relationship and they would be like, oh, I like this, and I'd be like, well, I don't have a strong opinion, so sure. And then as soon as you know it, your life revolves around their interests and their life and everything. And I really had to work on that and fight against that. So, you know, long story long is that's what I want to be doing, is everything that I figured out in that year. The real estate, the dogs, you know, I'd like to own a house. I think that's what I figured out, is I'm very much a homebody, and I want to like own a home. And I don't know, I want to this is like a John Lennon quote where he's like, I just want to be happy. Like, that's really how I feel. But after so long of focusing on my relationships, I finally feel like I'm putting more of a focus on my career and what I want to do with my life and have out of my life. And so I think I want to continue that journey. Yeah. I think that's my goal.
It's great.
Yeah.
I had like the opposite of your 20s, where I dated that girl for 2 years and then that was it. That was just me. So, which I've always like, for me, it's like hard to build someone in because I'm so used to being by myself. And I've had to be that way, going out to LA and coming back and going out and coming back. And
you have to be able to leave at a moment's notice, and it's hard to hold something down.
And leading like a very frugal, minimal lifestyle.
Starving artist, they call it that for a reason. Yeah.
But that's cool. I think everyone goes through that journey of like, who am I that I can add other people into, not 50-50, like 100-100.
Yeah. Like, how do I form... They say, like, puzzle pieces, right? And I think that's an awful analogy. And I talk about this on, like, the podcast. Really, it should be, like, I'm my own one person, and I'm my own one person, and we'll compromise where we have to, but we shouldn't compromise who we are. Yeah. That's, like, the big thing. And it's different, too, just, for the first time in a long time, being able to verbalize, like, what I want, and not thinking about, like, well, what do you want? So
that's good.
It's and after a year of being by myself, it was just like, all right, I feel solid enough in who I am that it's going to have to fit in with what I'm doing, as opposed to whatever you want. Yeah. I don't know what my computer's doing. No, my
battery's running low.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop this recording then.
Yeah, we're like right at an hour too.
Oh wow, okay. Wow, that flew by.
Yeah, it's good timing.